Welcome to the Africa session of the 2021 Annual Symposium of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, USA. The theme of our conference is finding collaborative solutions to promote freedom of religion or belief. This particular session will focus on African perspectives on that question. And we're delighted to have as co-sponsors ACLARS, the African Consortium for Law and Religion Studies, as well as WARCLARS, the West African Center for Law and Religion Studies. We're joined by three prominent panelists today with whom we hope to have a conversation and hope you'll listen in and feel a part of it as part of our global audience. So let me introduce our panelists. First, we have Professor Kofi Quashigah, who is a professor at the School of Law at the University of Ghana. Professor Quashigah's teaching and research interests include constitutional law, human rights, jurisprudence, governance, elections law, law and religion, and alternative dispute resolution. Importantly, Professor Quashigah is the president of ACLARS, and I would encourage you to visit the ACLARS website, aclars.org. ACLARS has its own annual conference, and this next year's conference, COVID permitting, will occur in Nairobi in May. So we're delighted to have Professor Quashigah both in his expert capacity and representing ACLARS. Next, we have Professor Akin Ibidapo-Obe, who is joining us from the Department of Public Law of the Law Faculty of the University of Lagos in Nigeria. He is the former dean of that faculty and is the founding coordinator of WARCLARS. And I'd like to say just a bit more about WARCLARS and the many things WARCLARS has accomplished and continues to accomplish. So WARCLARS, which is again the West African Regional Center for Law and Religion Studies, was established as a training hub for law and religion studies for the entire West African subregion to train a pool of academics, lawyers, religious leaders in West Africa to be experts and to be sensitive to law and religion issues. WARCLARS has worked closely with the International Center for Law and Religion Studies to engage in a variety of projects and initiatives, including introducing law and religion studies as a course at the Faculty of Law, establishing the Nigerian Judicial Expert Group on Law and Religion, comprising judges across the spectrum of superior and appellate courts in Nigeria. It's established the West African Traditional Council on Law and Religion in order to bring law and religion from the university classroom to a grassroots setting. These past 6 years, WARCLARS has mounted law and religion studies in universities in Nigeria who are affiliated with WARCLARS, which amounts to 30 universities, around 30 universities in Nigeria who are, as I said, affiliated with WARCLARS. So we're grateful to have Professor Ibidapo-Obe as well in his expert capacity, but also representing WARCLARS. And finally, joining us from South Africa is Dr. Lee Sharonic-Udamonz, who is trained in the study of religion and society. Her research and teaching and supervision focuses on the area of religious diversity, pluralism, religious education, the political economy of religion, new religious movements, and the media. Her current research is focused on religious diversity and pluralism and their importance for both the interdisciplinary and intersectional study of religion, as well as their importance for understanding the social significance of religion in achieving equality in our vastly unequal world. So we're grateful to have Dr. Sharonic-Udamonz as well joining us. So let me jump in then to our conversation. We hope to make this conversational rather than provide formal presentations, and again, hope that you'll feel part of the conversation as you listen in. So let's start broadly with just a sense of the state of religious freedom in Africa. So what are some of the challenges? What are some of the bright spots in religious freedom right now in Africa, or your particular region in Africa? So that we can get a sense of sort of what's our starting point as we look at collaborating toward freedom of religion or belief. So Lee, could I turn it to you to start us off?
Thank you so much, David. So I'm so glad that my colleagues are here as well today, because I can't speak for the whole of the African continent. Nor I can't even give a comprehensive account from the small southerly corner that I occupy geographically, politically, and epistemologically. But I do want to offer a few insights based on my work on religious diversity and social justice in South Africa. And in terms of the state of religious freedom, it seems like there still exists this tendency, this predilection in South African public culture and popular discourse that historicizes religious freedom as though it's something that can be attained all at once and then secured in perpetuity. But of course, this is not the case. And although religious freedom is constitutionally secured in South Africa, its possibilities and impossibilities, and I'm stealing from Winifred Sullivan's famous refrain, it remains contested and undecided. So while the 1996 Constitution of South Africa, which is famously liberal, which is famously broad and advanced in terms of its human rights vision, while it guarantees religious freedoms with very few but specific limitations, and while we can't compare the current measure of religious freedom to the kind of brutalities of the imperialist venture of Christianity and the Christian nationalism that produced and sustained colonialism and apartheid in South Africa, respectively, even in this democratic age, we can't be misled by the idea that the democratic and constitutional reform of the relationship between religion and the state, which took place in 1994 in South Africa, has offered a firm resolution. Despite the promises and the legal precepts, religious freedom in its broadest sense is still not guaranteed to everyone in equal measure. Now, that's not a formal proclamation, but that's an observation based on the ways in which religious freedom is contested on a regular basis, whether it's in the media, whether it happens in the media, whether it happens in schools, whether it happens in the courts. Like gender, like race, and socioeconomic status, I think that religion is a category of power and privilege, and that religious freedom is perpetually both contextual and intersectional. So while we celebrate and we continue to celebrate and appreciate the constitutional securing of religious freedom, I think that we also, at the same instance, we look at the ways in which religious freedom is continually challenged in various public sectors, but also in private spaces. So I think that's my input to begin with.
Thank you so much, Lee. That's really insightful. And I should note, it's a lot to ask of anyone, even a panel, to give African perspective. So I appreciate you contextualizing, and we'll draw some threads or maybe some overall lessons from the different regions we're able to look at. Thank you so much. Akin, can I turn to you, and then Kofi on this question of the current status of freedom of religion or belief?
Thank you very much. We may want to look at it from the perspective of the state level. At the state levels in Africa, apart from one or two countries, including Mauritania, where the constitution specifically prescribes Islam as a state religion. And for instance, you cannot be president or head of state if you are not a Muslim. Apart from one or two such states, African constitutions do proclaim religious freedom. That is looking at it from the constitutional perspective. When it comes to one or two other states also, we do have conflicts that could be traced to religion. Groups that are in conflict based on religion, or they align themselves to one religion and take up arms and prosecute it accordingly. For instance, if you come to the Central African Republic, the conflict happens to have, though political, happens to have been along the lines of the Muslims and Christians. Then if you go to the Congo, that's the DR Congo, again, there also we have groups or group that is Islamic, taking up arms against the others. Then, of course, we can also not forget the Sahel, the Islamic State and the jihadists in the Sahel region. And of course, Boko Haram, I think Akin will talk about that one. Boko Haram, all these are threatening the state of religious freedom in those parts of the world. Although they may be challenging the states, but of course, it spills over to affect religious freedom. We may also want to look at individuals, that is, within the nation states. Within the nations, yes, many constitutions proclaim religious liberty, freedom. But when it comes to the communities on one-on-one basis, in certain cases, you can have conflicts that are connected to religious differences. Otherwise, generally, one may say that in Africa, there is religious freedom, there is tolerance, but you cannot leave out some of these sporadic incidents. I'll stop for now.
Thank you, Kofi. Very insightful. Akin?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak to West Africa in particular. In line with what Dr. Lee suggested, I think we have different particularities in terms of space. So along the West African region, the only word I can use for the state of religious freedom is to say that it is in a state of crisis. If we are going with the COVID, lighting system, we are in amber zone right now. If we are not careful, we will get to the danger zone. We know that right now, West Africa, speaking broadly, is the most terrorized sub-region of the world. The center of gravity has moved from international terrorism, has moved from Syria and moves squarely to the Nigerian axis along Central Africa and West Africa. So we are having serious conflicts between the Christians and the Muslims. Within the Muslim fold, we are having crises between the Sufi and the Shiite, and of course, so it's all over the place. So I think there is no way we can get around it than to say that we are in a crisis and we need help. When I say we need help from all those who consider religious freedom to be the most fundamental freedom of all the human rights. If you have no freedom of worship, even life itself might be meaningless. if you are not able to adhere to your faith. So there's a great threat. The threat is very serious indeed, and we have to recognize that first and foremost. And then we have to then know how we are able to face these challenges.
Thank you so much, Akin. So what I'm hearing is that there's a need for this panel and this theme, that while religious freedom is guaranteed formally in the constitutions, most constitutions in Africa, there are both some severe challenges, it sounds like particularly in the Sahel, Western Africa, Central Africa, that come from these interreligious conflicts and from terrorism. But even apart from those, there's the day-to-day challenges to religious freedom that have been mentioned that may appear in individual conflicts or in the media, as Lee mentioned. And so, as Lee said, this remains contested, something we have to keep focusing on. And Akin, you certainly highlight that as well. So let's talk a little bit about how we approach these challenges and what role collaboration might play. So maybe for our next topic, can you comment on who the major players are, right? When we talk about collaboration, it's obviously more than one individual or group. So who are the players, and how might collaboration help us make progress with some of these challenges? Let's see. Akin, do you want to start us off?
All right, then. You see, the major players in terms of religious freedom in Africa, there is no doubt that the government plays a very, very strong role, a very important role. We just talked about African constitutions, and we said that even though many of them pay lip service to religious freedom, even as these constitutions were being made, and Nigeria and Kenya and some other countries are good examples, certain things that will undermine religious freedom were being embedded in the constitution. The special places and clauses that were assigned for Sharia and Islamic law and so on and so forth. You cannot have that kind of lopsidedness in any constitution where a lot of emphasis is placed on one particular religion, and you will have harmony. So the problem starts with that. Then, of course, state patronage. Only recently in Nigeria, the federal minister of agriculture sent a circular around in which he said that 30 million naira contracts had been awarded to build mosques in 774 local governments in Nigeria. They have already awarded the contract. This is the Minister of Agriculture. You will wonder what agriculture has to do with building mosques in all these kinds of. So we have government itself sowing the seeds of discord by the role which it plays in terms of, and of course, then we have the religious leaders too. They have an important role to in terms of stakeholders. In the Nigerian situation, the religious leaders have an overwhelming role to play. In fact, the Constitution has given the Sultan of Sokoto, if you like, the position of being the #1 traditional ruler in Nigeria. Many who are not Muslims and who are not from Sokoto believe that this is it's like handing over an important segment of power to a religious leader instead of a traditional ruler. Because some of us say, well, the Sultan is not really a traditional ruler. He's a religious leader. And you cannot then, if you like, put him in a position where he's now controlling those like from the South who are purely traditional rulers interested in their community and their culture and not necessarily religion. So religious leaders have a role to play. Look at one of our popular leaders, Sheikh Abubakar Gumi. He has become the mouthpiece of the terrorists and the kidnappers. He goes into the bush where even the government soldiers cannot go, and then he will come out and then tell the government that, oh, they have to pay the kidnappers the ransom that they have demanded, and so on and so forth. You will wonder why the government has not taken action against this religious leader. But because it belongs to certain religion and to a certain tribe, is the sacred cow. Whereas in other sections of Nigeria, other people have been, if you like, they have been restricted from expressing their own freedom of religion. And then, of course, we have to recognize that the people themselves form the major cornerstone of the players in the religious. We are the people that allow government sometimes and the religious leaders to manipulate us into a position of helplessness and poverty. You will imagine where in a particular section of the country, people from the age of 6 will not go to school. They will go to religious schools with their Quranic tablets, and then they will be there till they are 17 and 18. They become adults. What do we expect those who have no formal education and mathematics and English and whatever? What do we expect from them in terms of So I think what is happening is that there is a weaponization of poverty by our religious leaders to use the poverty of the. We have 15 million young boys who are unemployed, who are going about with begging bowls. They are easy recruits for these terrorists and these bandits and so on and so forth. So the people have a role to play. But I would like to emphasize most of all, in terms of players, the role of academia. This is becoming a very, very important platform of education on law and religion. People perceive academia to be neutral, to be interested in intellectual work, and therefore there's a lot of weight that is given to opinions and ideas and suggestions coming from academia. And this is why we are thinking that that platform, we will have to expand it to go beyond the universities, but also to embrace the members of the bar and other professions and so on and so forth, so that all the stakeholders will come together and work, with synergy to ensure that religious freedom is put on the front burner.
Fantastic. Thank you, Akin. And thank you. I gave a little summary of WARCLAR's work, but obviously that's something you've already been working on in collaboration with different sectors, whether it be lawyers or religious leaders or even traditional leaders, right? Taking this to the community. So it's a good example of that collaboration. Kofi, let me turn to you with the same question. Sort of who are the main players here, and how might collaboration help resolve some of the challenges we talked about?
Thank you very much. I will here limit myself to Ghana for now. In Ghana, yes, we have a government because whatever way we look at it, the actions of the government will impact on all of us and our religious beliefs also. So in Ghana, I must say that government tries as much as possible to balance the religions, particularly the two main religions, Christianity and then Islam. You see that happening even in terms of appointments onto boards and those kind of situations. There's at times the conscious effort to balance these two main religions. Now, the next group I may refer to are the leaders, the religious leaders. In the case of Ghana, I must say, perhaps unlike Nigeria, that we are blessed to have religious leaders that are very, very conscious of the consequences of religious violence. And so they go the extra mile to make sure that we have religious harmony, tolerance in the country. I can proudly mention the national imam, Sheikh Osmanu Nuhu Sharabutu. That is the national imam for the country. This man is an epitome of love and peace, harmony. In fact, when he celebrated his 100th birthday, he's now about 102.
Wow.
When he celebrated his 100th birthday, he celebrated it in the Catholic Church. Even some of his own religionists were not very much enthused. But he wanted to send a message that after all, irrespective of which religion you belong to, we are all the same. And whenever there is likely to be problems between particularly the Christians and Muslims, you see the Sheikh coming out to douse the flames. In fact, he's a blessing to Ghana, I must say that. Along those lines, we have some Catholic bishops also who also team up with him to ensure that there is that harmony between the two main religions. That is not to say that there are not some religious leaders in Ghana that will be seen to be fanning the flames. Recently, there was an issue of whether students in a girls' school, in a holy girls' school, secondary school, boarding house, should be allowed to take part in the fasting, the Muslim fasting. The institution is a Christian institution. When the matter came up, you will notice that the leaders, the church leaders of that religion who owned the school were not very compromising. As far as they were concerned, this is a Christian school. If you're in the school, you have to respect all the regulations laid down. If not, walk out. And this was almost going to get out of hand. On the contrary, you hear the Sheikh coming down the Muslim community until the matter was, the government waded in and resolved the matter. One may also mention the National Peace Council of Ghana, the Ghana National Peace Council. It is a government institution, and as the name goes, it has the responsibility of monitoring the peace barometer of the country, and when necessary, coming in to bring together the parties. It also does a lot when it comes to religious issues, conflicts, I may say. So the Sheikh and some of our other respected religious leaders do play a very important role in ensuring that there is religious harmony in this country, promoting dialogue where necessary. And I think we in Ghana should be grateful for that.
Thank you, Kofi. I really love that example of the Sheikh celebrating his 100th birthday in a Catholic church. That's really a beautiful example, very inspiring. Thank you. Lee, can I turn to you on this question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, colleagues. So I think I'll draw attention to three areas. So the first is, I think that we cannot consider religious freedom outside of any other freedoms, right? And any other rights that we consider quite frankly, worth struggling for, worth striving for, worth protecting. And so I think greatest collaboration could come from civil society organizations, non-government organizations that are religion adjacent. So we need to look at gender organizations working on issues around gender, working around issues around land and land reparations, organizations interested in working on issues around race and politics. And so I think that there's a tendency in the academy, but also in civil society, to separate religion, right, as something, and religion is separate. It is something that is sacred. It is something that is set apart from the ordinary, from the mundane, but it's also right at the center of those things, right? So if we start bringing religion back to the center and we position it alongside all these other contemporary rights, and sometimes, excuse my common parlance here, sometimes the sexier issues, like gender rights and things related to those kinds of stuff, it kind of takes the center stage, and religious rights are seen as something that's reserved for religious leaders to discuss, or highly skilled theologians or academics. But actually religion is being made and remade, and its meaning is being defined and redefined everywhere in society, from the classroom to the television to the courtroom, to the supermarket, when foods are separated out for Jewish people, for Hindu people, for Muslim people. So I think that's part of what I would see as greater collaboration, is bringing religion back into the center of these discussions around what it fundamentally means to be a human being in the world, right? And so religious freedom, religious equality, and bringing that into conversation with issues related to gender, issues related to race, issues related to socioeconomic class, poverty, and things that my colleagues have also mentioned. So for me, civil society, we need to broaden the kinds of associations that we task with dealing with issues related to religious freedom. So that's the first one. The second one, I want to also pick up on what my colleagues were saying, is that in the academy, we have a lot of power. There is a perceived neutrality that academics carry, but I think that that perceived neutrality is also reaching its expiration. I think more so in South Africa with the fees must fall movement and the calls to decolonize education. Academics are being tasked with real political business, right? We're being asked to take a position on fundamental issues. And when it comes to religious freedom, I think this is one of the areas that, especially in South Africa, we are pressured to take a stand on. And I think that is quite necessary, because this is something that we consider fundamental to the constitution of our democracy and how it operates. So I would say that, in the academy, we often speak about the interdisciplinary nature of subjects. So we study religion and law, but I think we also need to think about the transdisciplinary nature of the content that we're studying, right? And the way in which we're presenting this content, because religious freedom is not only an academic subject, right? It's not only an intellectual enterprise, it's actually a social justice issue. And it's a social justice issue that the academy can help frame in ways that can enact justice for people, can actually make people's lives better. And not just make people's lives better, but quite frankly, save lives. So that's my second point, right? Tasking the academy with a social justice imperative. And I know that critics of this kind of approach would say, oh, it kind of dissolves or it erodes the intellectual mandate that we have as academics. But I think that more so as the world is changing, as COVID, has created a new normal, we can't sit in our ivory towers and think that is what will protect us. We are all in the thick of this together. And then the third thing I would say is media. From news reporting, who is reporting, what are they reporting on, what kind of language are they using to report on issues related to religious diversity, religious pluralism, how people appear in society, if a person's religion is referred to out of utility, or if it is reinscribing a particular stereotype or a particular discriminatory pattern of referring to those who don't meet the normative structure. I think I'll just make one example. One of my students actually brought it up today in a reading group is earlier this year, I was asked by the media, one of our more reputable media houses, to give comment on, and I'll call this movement, I'll call it a Christian New Religious Movement. So it is a religious leader who has lots of money, quite outrageous practices in the churches. So known for this kind of charismatic healing, and has a reputation that is quite sensational. And the journalist started out and saying, "Can you speak about the criminality of this particular religious leader? And then can you also comment why the followers of this person believe him? Why are they so gullible?" And they said, "Well, firstly, let's talk about the problematic nature of how you're framing this discussion." And she said, "Yeah, but I'm chasing a deadline, so I really just need you to comment on these two things, the criminal nature and then the cultish nature." And I said, "No, but and the more I tried to engage this person on the topic, the more she was telling me that, time was ticking and she needed comment. Eventually, she just said to me, "Do you have another colleague that I could speak to?" And I said to her, "Yes, there are many colleagues, but I can't have a hand in, I can't have a hand in this. So you'll have to find them on your own." And I went and the story filed, and she got a colleague from another university with a different epistemological orientation to the study of religion and to the, and their perspective on what is happening was quite different, but it met her mandate. This colleague said that this activity is criminal. He called the religious leader a cult leader, and he said that these the believers or the congregants, he said that they were brainwashed, and that made the news story, right? And I checked, and it did. The story was filed, and the media has great responsibility. And so we need to watch the media. When the media is homophobic, when the media is discriminatory towards women, when the media is racist, we are more likely to be able to notice that discrimination taking place than when religion is the topic at hand, right? Because I think that there's still this kind of halo, so to speak, around religion that makes it feel like us as common everyday people don't have that, that access, that ability to critique or to engage it at that level. So that's on the level of news reporting. I think another thing, though, in terms of media is we have to pay attention to social media. What are people talking about on social media? In Africa, the way in which most Africans are still connecting to social media is via WhatsApp, right? So the statistics are there. WhatsApp is the most downloaded application in Africa. For many Africans, it is our only access to the internet, right? I mean, so discourses, narratives, stories are being shared through WhatsApp. Church services are being attended through WhatsApp. And this is a space where knowledge is not only being circulated, but knowledge about religion, the religion that you might adhere to, and the religion of others, it's being produced on and through WhatsApp. And so we need to pay attention to what is happening over there. And then finally, in terms of the media, we also have to realize that social media allows for not only religious leaders to speak on religion and have an audience, but also everyday people. So we have to pay attention to social media. There's a term that we use now when we talk about digital culture. It's called, you're an influencer. So you have a particular orientation as a person on a social media platform, you gather a following, and you, just by being who you are and explicating on your views on everything from who to vote for, what to eat for dinner, what to wear. People are amassing enormous followings. I'm talking about millions of people. And they are using these platforms not only to talk about commercial issues, they are talking about political issues. They are making commentary on religious issues. And these are now important sites of knowledge production. And religion is there, and conversations about religious freedom are taking place there, and people are listening, right? So those are my three kind of suggestions for collaboration, or for things for us to think about in terms of expanding our view of where religious freedom is located as a concept and as a practice. And so civil society, let's look at what's happening over there. Let's expand ourselves beyond theological circles. The academy, perhaps we can move just from thinking about the interdisciplinary nature of our work to the transdisciplinary nature of our work. And perhaps we can accept that social justice mandate and see ourselves as academics, but also activists. And we can think about what that really means. What is so wrong with not being biased about, with not being neutral about this topic? I'm not neutral about religious freedom. As difficult as it is, and as complicated as it is, I always want to advocate for freedom in its broadest sense, right? And that is how my scholarship is orientated as well. And then the media, the power, the persuasion, and the pervasiveness of the media, I think it's only growing and growing. And as digital culture starts to intersect with the real lived, blood, bones experiences of people, we can't ignore it as a legitimate site for knowledge production, a legitimate site for understanding how people conceive of authority and community, which are two core concepts of religion, right? Religious authority, religious community. So that's my addition.
Thank you so much, Lee. I really appreciate all of you have broadened my perspective on the players. We've talked governments, we've talked religious leaders, we've talked academia, but in multiple dimensions, both sort of that neutral platform, but engaging or taking education to other groups. We've talked about civil society, media, including social media. I think that gives us a wonderful sense of the landscape of how collaboration might happen. And I think you've provided both positive and negative examples of these actors engaging in collaboration or facilitating collaboration, right? So some of the role may just be, as Lee pointed out, with the media, right? Presenting in a way that doesn't obstruct, doesn't create, doesn't sensationalize and stir emotions where that make it difficult to even think about collaborating with some of these groups, or as Kofi pointed out, the government trying to be consciously neutral or balanced in appointing people, right? Which again would facilitate collaboration. We don't have much time remaining, so let's turn to the question of, well, you've already provided some examples of collaboration. So, if there are any other examples of positive collaboration, sort of lessons we can learn from those, or barriers you see and ways to overcome those, I'd love to hear from you on those. And then maybe some really brief comments on the future of religious freedom in Africa. So let's see. Akin, can I start with you, and then Kofi and Lee?
Thank you. Thank you. Now, collaborations. I think of collaborations in terms of, as a descriptive term, vertical collaboration and horizontal collaboration. By vertical collaboration, I mean a collaboration that starts from a locality and gradually, in ascending order, broadens to collaboration on the regional level, the sub-regional level, and the international level. We have enjoyed, and by we I mean world class has enjoyed such a collaboration in terms of vertical, and we have been able to, broaden areas of working together and so on and so forth. And we are hoping that one of the key achievements that we'll be able to notch up as time goes on is to actually increase the pool of those I call the converts to law and religion philosophy. You know, many of us got into these into law and religion because of one or two conferences that we attended and so on and so forth. But even though we make contacts at conferences, I think that it's also important to then have, if you like, just as the BYU International Center provides teaching and education on the international plane, we need also to build, alliances that will create it, So, for example, Faculty of Law has an arrangement with ACLARS to, build a core of trained academics. If we are lucky, if we are able to produce 50 or thereabouts every year, those who have a concentrated, attention on law and studies, and they have written papers and they have done research, this is a tool, because many of us who are in academics, we are exposed to students and we are influencers and so on and so forth. So we'll be able to build it without building this core of people sensitive to law and religion issues. I'm afraid that the future will be dire, because if we need to expand, the future is the upcoming generation, our students, and the next generation, and so on and so forth. So that is important. Now, in terms of the horizontal, people say charity begins at home. One of the things that work class is doing is to ensure that all the critical areas of our own national space in Nigeria, those who are also important and those who have influence, we touch them and we let them focus on law and religion studies as an important area of social activity and reform. By this, I'm talking, for example, when we mounted one or two conferences, I said, we thought that, look, by the time they finish the conference and they disperse, there's the likelihood that they will be waiting for the next conference. Why don't we build a core of experts that will be interacting? So we then formed the Nigerian National Judicial Group, expert group on law and religion, consisting of about 105 justices across the broad spectrum. All those 105 justices, you can imagine the amount of influence and space that they are going to touch in their own areas of influence. The same thing we have done with the NBA, Nigeria Bar Association. Nigeria has the largest bar in West Africa, in Black Africa, as I know. And if we are able to get lawyers who are really these social engineers, get them to be sensitive about law and religion issues, then we will have achieved a lot of things. And we are doing that in the sense that the MBA, Nigeria Bar Association, has invited us, that is work class and our international collaborators, to mount a CLE, continuing legal education program. It's only the COVID problem that is delaying us. Otherwise, we will have been having a gathering of about 5,000 lawyers who are going to undergo a 2 or 3 day program on law and religion. So again, we also thought that if we restrict what we are doing, and this is part of the horizontal expansion, if we restrict it to academia, only the eggheads, so to say, will have this knowledge. So what we have done is to involve the communities. And the only way you can involve African communities is to target the traditional rulers. And this is where the idea of the West African Traditional Rulers Council on Law and Religion came from. So we can imagine all the traditional rulers across West Africa, all of them focusing at one point or the other on how to get their communities. And these are the grassroots communities. This is where the conflict begins anyway. If there's going to be conflict, it's at the grassroots. So if they are sensitized and they have influence and they are respected, then many of these conflicts that we are talking about, we will have been able to. So those are the collaborations that I'm thinking about, the vertical and the horizontal.
Thank you, Akin. And I not thought of NBA as the Nigerian Bar Association. I always think of, over here, the National Basketball Association. So maybe we should think about how we involve them too. But thank you for those insights and for what you're doing in collaboration. Kofi, please.
Yeah, thank you. One good thing about religion is that the followers of a religion almost always look up to their leaders and imitate them. That's one good thing about religion. Now, if therefore we have leaders that are among themselves, leaders of the various religions, among themselves are seen to be collaborating, are seen to be good to each other, living in harmony with each other, you can be sure that their followers will follow suit. I think that is one thing we have to notice about religion. And therefore, if we can get our religious leaders, and if they themselves can get themselves together to be seen to be in harmony with each other, I think really will their followers be at each other. So the opportunities for dialogue, open dialogue, which should be seen and known to all, the followers, the countries generally, should be provided. As Akin is saying, if we can have such opportunities to always bring together our religious leaders, to sit together, to deliberate on national issues, their followers will say, after all, our leaders are working together. So why should we fight among ourselves? I think that is a very important point we have to note. And I think our governments should facilitate those dialogues. At the African continental level, the African Union Commission is very much aware of this influence of dialogue among religious leaders on peace. So the African Union has been trying to facilitate that kind of dialogue between the various leaders. I think for the future, this is something that they should be encouraged to do on a much more larger scale. At the African level, encourage it at the African level, and then also at the national levels. I think if that is done, as I said, the followers of religions will have no cause to be at each other. Because if their leaders are seen to be together, discussing issues together, being at conferences together, eating together, moving together, I think their followers will follow suit, and there will be peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kofi. I really appreciate that. I agree, and I also appreciate you bringing in the African Union and the role that the African Union can play. Thank you. Lee, let me turn to you for some final comments.
Thank you. So, I agree with my colleagues, especially with Akin, with the vertical and the horizontal. And I think that I would just like to add that, I think that in terms of religious freedom and looking at collaboration, but also looking at the future of religious freedom, I think that in terms of the academy, it will be important for us to shift religious freedom as thinking about religious freedom as a legal precept to thinking about it as a social justice issue. And I think that if we position religious freedom as a social justice issue alongside gender justice, alongside racial justice, I think that we might be able to achieve greater visibility for its importance. Because religious freedom, it's precious, like, it is something that must be protected, but it's also something which is robust, right? And it must be debated and it must be deconstructed and it must be held up for scrutiny. So I think that if we begin to think about religious freedom intellectually, and I think if we think about it intellectually and in terms of our social commitments as a justice issue, I think that we'll be able to generate much more support for the kinds of projects that are taking place at a government level, at a civic society level, because I think one thing that COVID has really taught us is that we, as a people, we need our governments, but we also need each other, and we all have a role to play in really creating the world that we want to live in. So I think that's all that I have to add. Those are my last words. So, well, not my last words; those are my final words for this evening.
Thank you so much, Lee. Absolutely, we want to continue hearing from you. I want to thank Kofi and Akin and Lee. As you can see, these are leading experts in law and religion, and I'm so grateful that they would take their time to share their expertise and insights with us. I've certainly learned about the situation, the landscape, the players, the challenges, but also appreciate these wonderful suggestions about how we might move forward. So please join me in giving a virtual thank you to Lee and Akin and Kofi. And I want to thank you, our global audience, also for tuning in and for caring about law and religion and the future of freedom of religion or belief. Thank you so much.